Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the Agile EVP. I'm Gabi Carachilo, and I lead operations at the Muse, Fairygodboss, Purpose Jobs, and I am thrilled to be hosting today's Industry Musings webinar. For those of you who don't know, the Muse, Fairygodboss, and Purpose Jobs are go-to career destinations for next generation women talent and purpose-driven talent. We help companies connect with job seekers by amplifying their employer brand through dynamic profiles, custom content like videos and editorial. We host hiring events, we have email marketing, and more. And the goal there is to drive that EVP awareness and, of course, build your talent pipelines and job applications. Today, I am joined by two incredible leaders. We have Carrie Corcoran, who leads Carrie Cares Employer Brand Consulting and is a guru in all things employer brand, recruitment, marketing, and candidate experience. Thank you so much for being here today, Carrie.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Gabi, Sam, and huge fan of Fairygodboss and the Muse.
Thank you. Thank you. And we also have Sam Kahn, who's the Director of Employer Branding at VegER for Pets. Sam, we are so excited to have you as well. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be with you. I've been a huge fan of the Muse and Fairygodboss for a long time. So just excited for this conversation. It's going to be a good one.
Awesome. Before we dive in, I would love for each of you to take a moment just to expand upon your bios, please. We'd love to hear more about what's going on for you personally and professionally, and maybe a bit more about your roles today, if you wouldn't mind. Carrie, could you get us started, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gabi. So I've been in the employer brand and recruitment marketing space for a little over 10 years now. Back when I started in EB, we didn't even call it employer brand. So I guess you might consider me a veteran of sorts in this space. And I got my start with a contact center solutions company and really fell in love with the HR side of marketing. From there, I went to Hilton and I led and built the strategic programs for Glassdoor, got them on the best places to work, which was a first for them, and also highest rated CEO for Glassdoor. So two huge achievements while I was at Hilton. Absolutely loved that opportunity. Then I went to work for a regional bank as vice president, talent attraction, and built programs from the ground up. I was the only person in the talent acquisition department of 20 that was focused on talent attraction, top of funnel only, and built some incredible strategic programs there, improved their candidate experience. Always looked at that with data in the background. And then COVID hit, and then I had to pivot. And so I started Carrie Cares Employer Brand Consulting. So I work with companies from startups to enterprises and build strategic programs for them with employer brand, recruitment, marketing, candidate experience, storytelling, launching video programs. Outside of that, last year, I participated as a co-host with the Hiring Humans podcast. And that was led by Craig Fisher and my cohort, Megan McCarthy, who's hopefully listening in today on this webinar. So welcome, Megan. And just an incredible opportunity to be part of that podcast to give back to those who are in job transition and focusing on the body, mind, and spirit connection. Went to Evolve in Atlanta, spoke there in January. That was Anna Morgan's event. If you aren't following Anna Morgan, please follow Anna. She's amazing, and have been busy ever since, just looking at what's next in the industry, and super happy to be here and be able to share my knowledge and more value.
I appreciate that, Carrie. You have a wealth of experience, and I'm so eager to pick your brain in the discussion today. Before we jump in, Samantha, would love to hear more from you.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the EV space and talent space for the past 7 years. I started off at HBO and helped build that employer brand, and then was there through multiple mergers and acquisitions, times of a lot of chaos and transformation, and built employer brand for Warner Media and then Warner Brothers Discovery. So my roots are very much in entertainment. I used to be a professional singer, so even further. But don't ask me to sing. And I really just fell in love with employer brand because I think it just it combined so many of my passions, this like ability to be super creative, be like super rooted in talking to people and understanding, what's important to them. And I just fell in love and really haven't looked back. And now as you mentioned, I'm director of employer brand for Veg for Pets. We are a pretty big company. We have about 200 hospitals and we're growing pretty rapidly. And our mission really is to help people and their pets when they need it most. And that is like so valuable to me, resonated so deeply with me. And it's just super fun to get to do employer brand for them and tell the stories of these like absolute heroes. So excited.
Wow. Amazing experience, great work, great mission, and I am eager to hear more. Before we jump into the discussion, I wanted to set the stage because we've already thrown out a few acronyms and terms that are very specific to our industry. So I thought it would be helpful to just pull up. I promise it's a very quick couple of slides just to set the stage as to how we're thinking about and defining concepts like employer brand and EVP. So Daniela, if you wouldn't mind bringing those slides up. Thank you. We'll get started with employer brand, and these are definitions that I pulled from SHRM. Where we wanted to begin is talking about employer brand being really this important part of the employee value proposition and really defining what organizations want to communicate as its identity to both potential and current employees. Sam, Carrie, anything that you would add or subtract from this SHRM definition?
No, I mean, I think that's a good spot on definition. I also tend to think of it as kind of the umbrella that everything sits underneath. It's that, core container around it all. That's how I think about it.
That's great.
Company's core philosophy and how they operate and how they attract talent internally and externally.
I love that. I also like to call out when I'm talking about employer brand that all organizations have an employer brand, whether they've shaped or amplified one or not. It exists. It's always on. We use that phrase a lot in employer brand recruitment marketing, right? It's always on. So thank you for adding some comments. We can click on to the next one here. I think if we could scoot back to EVP, there's one slide first there, Daniela. Yeah, slide one. Perfect. I wanted to define the employee value proposition here. And the SHRM definition is that it represents the unique set of benefits, rewards, experiences that an employer offers to attract and engage and retain employees. What I like to call attention here, and I made it yellow on purpose, is that it's unique, right? When we talk about EVP, we need to go beyond basic compensation, benefit offerings, things that are pretty standard in today's marketplace. We want to highlight what makes you different, what organizations have to offer that isn't the same as every other company out there, especially those within your vertical or the particular location and community that you serve, and really highlighting the why. Why work for that particular company? What employees have to gain in return for their contributions? I see some head nods, so wanted to open it up. Sam, Carrie, it seems like we're in alignment here on this definition. Anything more that you would add?
I think it's spot on. EVP is the why somewhere is a great place to work. I also think EVP, employer brand, and recruitment marketing all get mushed sometimes. And so I think of recruitment marketing as the how you express that. And again, the employer brand is that container that houses everything. So it helps. It's something that's stuck with me and helps me compartmentalize everything. Yeah.
I love that. And so then moving forward, today we're talking about Agile EVP. And so let's back up and talk about traditional EVP. And when I'm thinking about more of a traditional employee value proposition, I think about an approach that's probably a bit research intensive. The messaging framework may be more stable, activated across brand touchpoints, and sometimes I see that it could be slower to launch and update. And so in contrast, when I'm thinking about the concept of an Agile EVP, I see this as something a bit more flexible, maybe a story-driven approach that evolves in real time. And it does those through continuous employee input, iterative content, and then, of course, ensuring that we're keeping messaging current and authentic. So that's how I'm thinking about the two. Again, wanting to use this to set the stage and have the framework as we navigate into the discussion, but I'll pause before we pull the slides down to see if there's anything, Carrie, Sam, that you'd add, and anything from our audience too. We certainly want to make today's conversation two-way, and so whether you have questions, comments, feedback, please use the chat, the Q&A function. We want to make sure that you're just as involved in this discussion we're having today.
I'll chime in on that one, Gabi. So traditional EVP is very time-consuming, labor-intensive, usually an agency involved, multiple stakeholders across the organization involved. Could take anywhere from, I would say, at a low end, maybe 6 months to like a year and a half. And within that time, how many things have changed, right? There's so much that could change. So when looking at an Agile EVP, I mean, I did an EVP for Heartland, an EVP draft, and the directive I was given from my boss's boss was to do it in 6 weeks. And after I fell out of my chair and composed myself and contacted my mentor and said, please talk me off a ledge, I figured out a great way to do that. And I have to give credit to James Ellis. He's got a great framework for building and launching an EVP, or just at least getting to the draft portion of the EVP. So you've got a solid framework that you can present to leadership within a 6-week time frame. So don't create everything from scratch. Don't try and figure it out on your own. Like, there are people in the industry who have done this before, who are incredible. And I relied on his framework in order to put that together and build the draft in 6 weeks' time. And so you can do it in a very condensed period of time. You'll also probably skip some critical steps if you do it in that short period of a time frame, but it can be done. I am proof. I'm still here.
Are you alive and well, Carrie? It can happen, and shout out to James Ellis. He has phenomenal content. Highly recommend that everybody give him a follow as well. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Daniela, for helping us set the stage and pulling up these slides. We can transition into the conversation. And my first question is, why? What are the key drivers behind the need for an Agile EVP? Sam, I thought we could send this one your way to kick us off.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of different factors that could drive this. I'm going to focus a bit on like high growth companies, because I think that is a core factor. That was a core factor, I think, for us at Veg. But when you're in that like high growth stage, your story really doesn't stand still. So what you're saying about who you are and what it means to work somewhere today might need to flex tomorrow. Things shift, priorities change, you're bringing new people in with new perspectives. So at Veg, when I joined, I didn't necessarily set out to build an Agile EVP, but it ended up being something that we like discovered through the process was really freeing when we realized we could create something that felt really true to right now, but could flex as we grow. But as I said, there's a lot of other reasons that people might consider building an Agile EVP, changes in society, work preference changes, things like that. But for us, having the power of agility to meet the moment and then just keep evolving was really the biggest driver.
That's amazing. And it almost happened organically for your organization. And now you're ahead of the curve, Sam. So kudos to you and the work that you've done there. Carrie, anything more to add in terms of why an organization might want to pursue an Agile EVP versus something more traditional?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that the only constant in today's landscape is change. I mean, there's economic conditions that are changing. You might have senior leadership changes. Like, you may be in your EB role for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then all of a sudden you get a new CEO or you get a new CHRO and everything shifts. So change is constant. And with that, I mean, let's say that you are doing a traditional EVP and you're taking a year and a half to get to launch. Well, how many things have changed within that year and a half? And you have to go back and relook at it. So being agile is so critical to today's changing environment. And I only see that increasing because of so many things that are going on globally.
That's such a great point. We've seen a lot of change even since 2025, so it's important to call out. We had a comment from Ashley who also mentioned with her company they have some standard overarching messages and pillars of their EVP, and then underneath those pillars they flex by region. So maybe they have more specific local EVP messaging. I've also seen organizations flex and be agile for particular job functions and core hiring needs that are kind of constant evergreen roles for those organizations. And then prioritizing that agility and the work and investment in that adaptability for those very key hiring needs in the next 6 months to a year. So wanted to call attention to that. And then the other piece that I like to chat through when I'm thinking about an Agile EVP, and it relates to the change that both of you mentioned, is that it's so important that the messaging is honest, relevant, authentic for the candidate experience, which Carrie, I know you're a huge advocate for too. We want to make sure that the messaging that we're putting out there and the stories that we're telling about the organizations we represent are timely and relevant so that there's no sort of confusion or disruption to that candidate or employee journey and experience as well. Awesome. So I'd love to pivot then to chat more about the core components of building an Agile EVP. How have you done that? And maybe Sam, we could start with you on this one.
Sure, yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind for me personally when I think of Agile EVP is actually physically agile. So I'll just explain a little bit more about Veg's EVP because I think it helps demonstrate this. But at Veg, our EVP is we find a way to say yes so you can do the unexpected. And that line, by the way, came directly from our culture. The first part, we find a way to say yes. We're a very yes first culture. In terms of how we treat our customers and patients. And so that was like right on for us. But we wanted still the second part of that to be able to flex. And so we kind of made it like a visual fill in the blank Mad Lib statement where the second half of this statement can rotate out for something else. In this case, like we use our pillars. So we find a way to say yes, so you can help people and their pets, so you can grow where you want to go, so you can be on the front lines of change, so you can find your place. And so that was really, really helpful for us because it allowed us really to like shift alongside the moments that our people were actually experiencing in real time. And like you were saying, tailor it for different personas. And we're definitely not alone in that approach. Like Annie Hurley's team at NBCU comes to mind with NBCU Here You Can. Google, I believe, also is built for everyone, and they had that kind of similar rotating feature. So physical is the first thing for me. And I think the other thing I would note here is that when you're building an Agile EVP, it doesn't mean that the core message needs to be like changing all the time and you need to be constantly rewriting and reiterating. It's really just iterating on how you express it, where it shows up, and that sort of thing.
I love that. I mean, it's really the physical nature of how you've built that for that iteration. And it doesn't have to be a full evolution of sorts. It's not necessarily going back to the drawing board, scrapping and thrown away that traditional EVP that took so much time and effort to build and then launch. This is more of an adaptation to what that first process may have looked like, unless it was a 6-week sprint, as Carrie has experienced.
Ours was 6 months. I'm so impressed, Carrie, by this. My mouth literally dropped. Like, what?
That's amazing. Carrie, anything that you would add about the core components of building an Agile EVP?
Yes. So I am going to go back to before even launching to go into building an Agile EVP. As employer brand leaders, it's our responsibility to do what is best and right for the organization. And if you have a choice between going with the traditional EVP versus an Agile EVP, it's going to be less expensive. You don't necessarily have to hire that agency and pay $300,000 to that agency to build it for you. There are frameworks that exist out there. And as a leader, you have a great opportunity to persuade leadership to go in the agile direction versus the traditional direction and get their buy-in. There's so much education that we have to do, and we have the ability to influence in those areas. So make sure that it is supported from the top down before you start. If it's not, obviously, you're going to have all sorts of challenges, which you'll probably overcome, but it might be a little bit more of a bumpy road.
That's a great point. I think that buy-in across the board is important, but especially from a leadership perspective. And sometimes I find that a lot of those discussions also come down to the metrics, the KPIs, the ROI of these sorts of initiatives. And we actually had a question that came through about the measurement and reporting on EVP metrics. So I thought it was a good opportunity to maybe bring that into the fold for this conversation and see, Sam, Carrie, are there any particular metrics that you have your eye on when it comes to EVP? Anyone can go.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
Start simple. Start with your recruiting team. And there are certain things like they're going to be your biggest employee advocates as you launch your EVP. So start with, just go back to like having everybody have more consistent messaging and look at how many connections they have when they start, and then look at how many they have 30, 60, 90 days in once they start messaging. And you can see the upward trend of more engagement, more influence, potentially better candidates because of the messaging, attracting more of the right candidates. So start with your recruiting team first and see what you can measure there, and then build out your analytics after that. There's social engagement and things like that. And truly, does it really matter? Like, you have 100 followers on Facebook and now you have 150. It's like, okay, great. You grew your influence, you grew your followers and all of that. So those are things that you can measure. It's one of the hardest things to measure. And I wish that there was a solid framework that someone has developed that said, this is it. This is the golden poobah on how you measure everything as it pertains to your EVP and your employer brand, but it doesn't exist.
And I'll just add, so for us, we pulse our employees twice a year, and it happens a little bit more frequently for other kind of HR people topics, but for EVP in particular, we pulse them twice a year to say, like, this is kind of what we stand by as the value of working here. Like, how does this still align with what you're experiencing in your life at Veg? And so that gives us a really nice literal pulse on, like, is this still the right story? You said it was at the beginning. Is this still how you're feeling? The other thing that we do in particular is we also will survey our customers, because at Veg, we have open concept hospitals, which means that you can literally, like, when you walk in as a customer, you're in the ER. And so you're never leaving your pet. You're seeing everything going on. You're seeing how our people are relating to each other. Are they happy? And so it is actually really valuable to understand, like, would you recommend Veg as a place to work? Like, you see this. And so that's helpful for us as well. And then the other thing I would say is, like, aside from those measures, I'm also really looking to see, like, signals for cultural adoption. Are they actually using some of this language that we've developed? Are candidates saying it as well? Like I've heard Veg says yes to growth, and that's why I applied. Like, is leadership reinforcing it when we have town halls? So harder to put an exact number on, though we try, but there's kind of a qualitative aspect to that I pay attention to.
It's such a great point. And you must have read our audience's mind, Sam, because there was a question about how an EVP internally could tie into the public or customer facing brand. And are there parallels? Should it differentiate itself? And I think it depends on maybe the organization, the product, how engaged the user base is with the workforce and such. Sometimes I see very distinct cultural EVP internal brands versus the external commercial facing brands. But I do think that there's a world in which there could be some really nice synergies across both. That's a really great point. And I love the concept of pulse surveys as that way to really get that steady drumbeat and round of feedback from the people who really should be shaping the EVPs and telling us why they joined the team, why they stay with the organization, and if that messaging is still a good fit. I've also seen organizations ask questions during exit surveys too, and understand as a part of that transition the reasons why they left, but also get that pulse check at that moment too, to understand how that messaging is aligning. Carrie, anything else that you would add?
Yeah, I think those are great points. And Sam, I love that you're incorporating the customer feedback in yours. That's awesome. Because customers can become clients, or they can become employees too, right? And
Right.
So that's fantastic. I love that. So I would say, if you have a limited capacity on your team, like I know Sam's a team of one. I've been a team of one multiple times before when I've worked for enterprise companies. And you don't have the time, energy, dedication, or resources to do pulse surveys across the entire organization, one thing that you could do is look and see where is your greatest hiring need. And let's just say it's the technology division. Focus on just that one division, do pulse surveys there, make sure everybody's still in alignment, create your messaging around your EVP, and that may even be a little bit of a separate segmented EVP for your tech group, and prove the value of using everything within that group before you like take one bite of the elephant at a time. Don't try to eat the entire elephant, because it is overwhelming and you don't want to do that. And at least you can prove to senior leadership, look, we did this with this group over here. This is the highest hiring need. It's successful. Let's roll that out to different divisions, but let's do that strategically, maybe here this quarter, and then do it quarterly across the organization.
Actually, I'll just add one other thing to that. So we pulse alongside the pulse that's already going out to that our people team is sending out. And so we kind of join efforts there. And so that's another suggestion, is to avoid that very real survey fatigue, is try to find places where there already is something going on. Obviously, you don't want it to be a jarring kind of question, departure from what the intention is behind the survey. But that's a great thing to think about if you're trying to be scrappy.
Great recommendation. I love that. And survey fatigue, I think, is all something that we're all mindful of. We're always being solicited to provide feedback and participate in those surveys. And we want to see high engagement when we roll out those questions to make sure that we have a really solid data set to be able to drive insight and take action on. So such a great call out. And another scrappy recommendation that came from a client partner was jumping into a new role and wanting to start to build out that framework without even launching something new. They had a bunch of historical data from full employee engagement surveys that was fairly timely still. So maybe the questions weren't exactly what they wanted to ask, or maybe framed up the particular way that they wanted to. There were some really great preliminary data sets and insights that they could pull from that as they started to scale. That's great. Which is a perfect segue to the next question that I had listed, which is all about tools and technologies that can support, whether it's the implementation, the activation, the advocacy. There's a lot of work to be done here. And we've called attention to the fact that not all of us are working with large, comprehensive teams or agencies. So how can we lean on technology to support us in this effort? Sam, do you want to start us off on this one?
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing I was going to mention, but I won't spend too long on it because we just talked about pulse surveys, but obviously, leverage that. There's Qualtrics, there's Google Forms, there's all kinds of different things, whatever works for your organization. But I actually found for us the biggest unlock in terms of more of like an implementation strategy was thinking about using Workplace. That's our community engagement tool that we have at Veg. And we also have this year-long campaign that we do that is all about our culture, and intention is behind it is really to engage people regularly, get them practicing what we're talking about with culture in a real way. And it's something our employees were very used to already. And so we used that as kind of our big launch in January when we launched it. And so we had asked everyone to basically share their most unexpected life at Veg stories on Workplace. And we had this crazy overwhelming response, hundreds of messages. And it was just such a great way to activate that in such a natural way where, certainly we did a lot of other things. We put out sizzle videos, we did, toolkits and all that kind of thing that you normally do. But to start things off with people hearing from their fellow, colleagues of how they were experiencing this was the biggest unlock for us. And I'm such a supporter of that. So it's similar to with my other comment about how do you find things that are already going on to kind of infuse this into it. The same thing goes here. Look at what is already really working well. Is there something that your organization is really used to, and maybe there's an opportunity where you can use that as a stage for your EVP.
That's amazing. What a great response. And I love the employee storytelling. I think even externally when we produce and publish work on behalf of our clients that are really those employee spotlights, they always have incredible engagement. People love to hear and see that authentic personal experience of what it's like working within those organizations, and maybe more so than some of the other recruitment marketing tactics and strategies and content that we're putting out. And so, Sam, did you use that internally primarily, or did those stories also become support and topics for that external facing strategy as well?
Kind of both. Definitely internally, we really wanted it to be this source of inspiration. So you can search #LifeAtVeg on Workplace and just feel totally inspired by yes, this is why I do this. This is why I do the unexpected at Veg. So certainly internally, and we've also been using those stories kind of as a repository to pull from as we're thinking about people to ask to participate in different social things or for our careers video coming up. So we're using that in a number of ways there. And our social team, I have to give them huge props. They're so good at repurposing those stories shared. So people will share, videos, and they're really good at pushing that then out. So it definitely makes its way out for the world to see too. Amazing.
I love to hear it. Thanks for sharing. Carrie, any other tools, technologies that you've used you're a big fan of?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go a step way back to the beginning, whether you're developing a traditional EVP or whether it's an Agile EVP. For gosh sakes, don't skip launching it internally. Okay, I worked for a company that did I built the entire strategy. Here's how we're going to launch it internally. And they said, we don't need that. And I just about fell out of my chair again. So launch internally first and look for like what tools and tech are what's internal comms using? How can you benefit from using their tools and technology? What's marketing using? Is there something that they're using? Like, do they have a CRM? What is HR using? Is there an employee newsletter that goes out at whatever segment touches employees? Look at all those different segments and how you can educate up, down, and across the org. Do not skip this step. Can it be successful if you skip it? Maybe. I think it's not a good idea to do it that way. You're going to have more buy-in if more people internally know what your EVP is and why they should be invested in it. And then you're going to turn them into talent champions for you. So it's so critical not to skip that first step of launching internally before you launch externally, and just look for those opportunities to partner up, down, and across the org to educate, and then also use their tools and technologies to drive it.
It's a great call out. Yeah, bringing that internal awareness, that internal buy-in, and hopefully employees have been a part of that build, right? So they're familiar that the process is underway. And then, gosh, let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate this collective brand, right? That we've built as an organization, so that our talent acquisition professionals, our colleagues across business units, our hiring managers, we're speaking the same language, and then we're amplifying. And so when those folks go and share with their colleagues, whether it's on LinkedIn or other channels or just within their own communities, it's also free amplification when they do so. And they're the folks who are living and breathing that culture firsthand. So who better to be sharing those stories? There's a really great question that came through from Chandler that I'd love to bring into the fold here. And the question is, what's the balance between culture shaping an Agile EVP and an Agile EVP steering the direction of the culture? Should an Agile EVP ever be used to nudge culture, or should it always follow?
Yeah, I can take that. I think really good EVP is always like that perfect balance of what is true already and aspirationally where you want to go. And so it really like can go both ways. So like it certainly could open up people's world to be like, oh, like I've been waiting for the perfect words to describe my career experience. Like, yeah, this is it. And it can totally shape culture in that way. And I can say, like at Veg in particular, it's a culture unlike anywhere I've experienced. It's totally not normal. And we like love attaching to that. And it really has shaped the culture internally. So I think it's a great question. Yeah.
I like the way that you described that, where you're still leading with that authenticity, but there's a bit of aspiration and where you're looking to head and the people who are helping to shape that journey. And we can have some of that too in the mix. Carrie, are you aligned? Do you have a different perspective?
I am aligned with that. And I think once you do the surveys and the research, I would bet that there will be synergies between what comes out in the culture, or what's already been developed as far as culture messaging. It should align a lot with the employer value proposition. And I like to look at what is specific, attractive, different, and real. Thank you, James Ellis. And you're going to see certain things resonate across the board, and you'll probably be in alignment more than you think you might be already.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've talked a bit about this already, but I'll I'll bring this question into the discussion next, which is how do you empower employees to participate in the EVP creation? And if there's any sort of iteration or update process along the way. We've talked a lot about pulse surveys as a critical way to get that firsthand insight, but wanted to see if there was anything more that you would add to the ways in which you've built that culture of participation within your teams. Sam? You're nodding, so maybe I'll share this one with you first.
Yeah, sure. So I would say, I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, but the step one, and it's not something that I also, by the way, did not realize to do before I joined Veg in particular. But step one, I think, is like not to call it an EVP, because most people have no idea like what the heck that means. And so I would say in particular, if you're an organization like we are, where you have people who are frontline workers and like they're just not used to like these kinds of terms. Like, for example, I said EOD to someone the other day and they were like, huh? So just trying to maybe express that in a different way. So for us, we called it the Veg Brag Project, and really like described it like, think about what you'd tell your friends or family about, like what do you brag about? And that really resonated, and it made people really like think about it in a personal way. It evolved, and now we call it just Life at Veg, because that's really what it is. It's that expression of life at Veg. And that is something that like people just get. They're like, yeah, okay, I understand this. It's not some fancy word. And the other thing that I think we did really well in development process was like we really involved them from day one. And I led numerous focus groups, surveys. I actually went into our hospitals and talked to our people, because I didn't want to be some like nameless person who's coming in and like, this is what your EVP is. And so they really, I think, felt very involved from the beginning. And as a result, I have this group of people who are really amazing natural advocates of it. So when it launched, they were so excited. I like really took the time to say like, thank you so much, because you literally shaped this with me. Like your voice shaped this. And like, I wasn't playing around with that. I wanted them to feel like they had a big part, and that trickles out. People talk, they share, this is what my experience was like. So it was a huge thing for us, and something that I definitely am going to continue to be doing as we continue to pulse. And if ever like we're seeing like, oh no, there's some like dissonance here, like we'll definitely be recreating those steps to say like, what's going on here?
That's amazing. And I see some comments that folks love the brag project and breaking down that terminology. I've once worked for an organization that had a full like 8.5 by 11 sheet of acronyms that were used within the business and broke those down for employees. And I think that when there's opportunity to simplify and talk about the work that we're doing in a way that any person, whether they're in this particular industry or not, can understand and become an ambassador and advocate for, we're doing the best work we can collectively. That's great. Well, we have, just a few minutes left. So for the folks tuning in, please keep the questions coming. I love seeing them come through. We should have some time for a couple more as we prepare to wrap.
Uh-oh, we lost Gabi for a second. And Carrie, I think you're muted. Well, Carrie, I can say, because I got some of the questions ahead of time. I think one of the things that we were wanting to also talk about was like, what are some of the potential challenges in implementing an Agile EVP? Like, do you have any thoughts on that? I can share mine as well.
Oh gosh. You have to be so organized and very strategic, and make sure that you have a program manager, whether that's yourself or someone else who is actually helping manage the project and keeping track of details. When I did the 6-week one, unfortunately, we didn't have the ability to have a project manager, and that would have been so impactful and so helpful. When I worked on the EVP with BECU, which is a huge enterprise credit union, they put an IT project manager on the entire EVP project because they had that project knowledge. And it was so impactful to be able to have that project manager keep everything on track and moving and going and pushing it along. So if you have an opportunity to do something like that, or whether it's an HR project manager or an IT project manager or what have you, a lot of different organizations will lend someone else in to help with that project and to bring it to fruition. And that is super helpful in that capacity. I mean, there are going to be so many challenges that pop up no matter what. And it's kind of Murphy's Law when it comes to developing EVPs.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Sam and Carrie, for jumping in there while I had Wi-Fi flicker. Appreciate everybody's engagement and participation in today's discussion. And thank you, Carrie and Sam, for sharing your insights and expertise and all of the great work that you've done in building and scaling Agile EVPs. We hope everybody in the audience today is feeling inspired by the advice that our presenters shared with us. And I'll make the plug that partners like the Muse, Fairygodboss, and Purpose Jobs are here to support you in these ventures and amplify your EVP, especially if you have an Agile one. We want to help as all organizations navigate this ever-evolving landscape. And we want to continue to hear from you in terms of topics that we can continue to bring to this Industry Musing series. So please, if you have any recommendations, there is a type form available here where we would love any feedback you have for us. Thank you again, and we will look forward to seeing you at our next Industry Musings webinar. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you. Everybody have a great day.